Hey y'all, the white supremacy consciousness. It's a story of silence, compliance, and erasure. Let's go.
Today's video is about white supremacy consciousness.
This subject is personified and justified through manifest destiny.
Manifest destiny creates different opinions on racist facts, such as
El Paso shooting. Different news anchors have different news stories until soon afterwards more new interesting stories emerge.
The watered-down culture of Latinos then cultivates racism and oppression that is taught and understood in American society.
and any misdemeanors caused by Latinos are overblown up,
While any white transgressions are waved off and considered outliers of normal society.
Like I said before, this video is about the understanding of white supremacy consciousness.
There is a sort of malaise settled into the bones of Latinxs, beaten in through dominant manifest destiny. It's an ideology that integrates thought, emotion, and spirituality. The stories from news media and evangelical pastors and other church leaders, so evangelical church leaders of my youth, told me Mexicans were poor, desperate, and needed my help. My Mexican family displayed the work ethic characterizing the well-advertised American dream. Hey, they worked in agricultural fields picking strawberries and nannied for wealthy white families while saving every last penny to buy homes and cars to gain a place in the system. Life revolved around becoming something none of us could be, white. The images and caricatures of my family were reinforced in music, television shows like I Love Lucy, and again in church. Mainstream thought and media reinforced and still reinforce the need to survive as the need to become white. As a biracial Latino woman, both German and Mexican, eager to please my parents, educators, faith leaders, and peers within the confines of who they said I was and who I could be, I often found myself at odds with myself. The story I told myself, hey, comply, be silent, and erase my heritage, and I'll be invisible enough to succeed. This is the underlying requirement. It's white. It's exemplified by the idea of manifest destiny. Purposes for my life, hey, don't question dominant culture. Don't deviate from dominant culture's traditional interpretations of the Bible. And don't speak up about your situation. And don't distinguish yourself outside of whiteness. And please remain as loyal, patriotic, and pro-American as possible.
And I'm coming at you with 3 things that are important to the survival of the white supremacy consciousness. Number 1, you got to comply. So as a Mexican, American, U.S. citizen, married to a naturalized U.S. citizen from Mexico, we know all about this. First, it's compliance with U.S. immigration. And once you check all those boxes, you got to comply socially. So that means you got to do faith a certain way. You got to have work look a certain way. You got to interact with your friends a certain way. And you got to go about life a certain way. And it's usually the white European American way. And if you don't, well, then maybe you're not accepted. So once you comply, number 2, you got to stay silent. You got to stay silent about what you think about racial microaggressions. You got to stay silent about what you believe. You got to stay silent on politics, on faith, on what life is like at work. You got to silence your body, how it feels. You got to silence your mind and your intellect. Okay, so lastly, number 3, you have to commit to being erased. So what holiday is coming up for Mexicans? Well, everybody probably knows it as Cinco de Mayo, right? And I think it's been reduced to an excuse for beer drinking and hard shell taco eating. Well, that's not really what it's about. So not only have we complied, now we're silenced, now our culture's been erased. In essence, a holiday will be celebrated without any knowledge of why it's celebrated in the first place, and it's been taken over by this consumerism and this mock holiday that has nothing to do with what we really experienced as a culture and ethnicity. So I don't want to be erased, and I don't want to erase anybody else.
Let's get a picture of erasure. Talking a little bit about Cinco de Mayo. In the El Paso shooting, here we see a man, and he lost his son. And the son is now an orphan. In fact, the birthday of that child was just passed. And then what does dominant culture imagery talk about as regards to Mexicans? What do they remember? This meme right here, which I've seen a lot these days. Imagine, if you will, a world where Cinco de Mayo falls on Taco Tuesday, only to be ruined by a virus named after a Mexican beer. Well, I heard a lot of these jokes this year. The coronavirus, and it happened to fall on a Tuesday, Cinco de Mayo this year. So I don't want my culture and history to be erased, but this is the process of what it looks like. The picture of erasure. The terrorist attack in El Paso exposes the dominant culture erasure of Mexican ethnicity, culture, and identity. An attack which targeted Latinxs by a rogue terrorist was excused through explanations of non-compliant immigrants and silenced quickly by society and media, and finally erased from the narrative of racism. A dominant culture married to the social construction of race enforced by any means my family lives without a nation, in silence and finally erased.
Talk about Cinco de Mayo, because there's anger dwelling in my bones. Dominant culture's absorption of Latinx piñatas, fiestas, language idioms, well, I don't like it. The dominant culture allows Latinx culture and ethnicity to reclaim their picture of true identity. Their very existence will crowd out politicians, historians, faith leaders, neighbors, and business owners. I mean, we got Cesar Chavez and Frida. American commercialism capitalizes on the Mexican holiday, Cinco de Mayo, selling cerveza chips, jarred salsa, taco hard shells, and cans of preservative-laden refried beans, which are never used in Mexican cuisine. Having stolen Mexican land, subjecting indigenous peoples and Mexicans to manifest destiny, it seems only natural that in 2019 and 2020, the ones advertising typical Americanized versions of native cuisine and promoting a foreign holiday do so off the backs of the Mexicans they have erased.
Hey, it's Jules and I'm here with some of my siblings to tell you about Cinco de Mayo, by the way, which is not Mexican Independence Day.
It's a day of celebration when Mexico won the battle against the French army.
It was an unlikely win because the Mexican army won against the French army, which outnumbered them 2-1.
Napoleon III came to collect Mexico's debt in a none too friendly way.
The battle which ensued was christened La Batalla de Puebla.
The day this battle was won was May 5th, 1862, and has been celebrated by Mexico ever since, but has since then been adopted by the Americans.
The Americans, however, have no idea of this battle and drink margaritas because they think it's Mexican.
If you ask an American what happened this day, they'll have no idea how to answer.
This video was made so that we can give Americans a better understanding and appreciation of what happened on May 5th.
Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you understand that Cinco de Mayo is more than just about drinking and eating tacos.
Wasn't that fun? Cinco de Mayo is actually celebrating La Batalla de Puebla. It's the celebration of the defeat of the French army marching into the capital. Mexican fighters beat out French with sticks and stones and machetes. The heroes of these battles aren't named. The gritty fighter stories are untold. Mexicans defended their land in 1862 against French colonizers wanting to maintain their colonial holdings in the Caribbean, extract debt payments from Mexico, and expand their colonial empire. And this is the guy that came to do it, Napoleon III from France. Erased. We have the opportunity to relearn history. In places, a celebration of native fighters against their European enemies is a faceless, dumbed-down, unimportant narrative to dominant culture. It is another excuse to gather, revel, and delight in whiteness, rather than a road to discover Mexican culture, what the holiday actually means to Mexicans.
If you think about it, Cinco de Mayo is an odd holiday for the U.S. to celebrate because the U.S. often downsizes Mexican culture to make the U.S. seem bigger and bolder. This holiday is often mistaken as Mexican Independence Day to make a bigger excuse for the U.S. to eat Mexican food and drink.
In 1862, the President of Mexico made settlements with Spain and England to settle their debt, but France saw this as an opportunity. An opportunity to make land, gain money, and make an influence on the American continent. American France made their way to Mexico and marched on the little town of Puebla. The Mexican army beat back the French army even though they were outnumbered 2-1 with machetes and stones.
As you celebrate this holiday, please remember the notion that the Mexican natives beat back their oppressors and powered through adversity, and share with your family and friends about a time you powered through adversity.
Hey guys, thank you for watching this video, and remember the importance of powering through adversity.
Why should you rethink the white supremacy consciousness? It erases Latinx's, it cripples the theology of suffering, and providing our current culture an illusionary path to redemption, which crumbles under the weight of Jesus' suffering. It erases faith. God is grieved when a part of the Imago Dei is shut off, amputated, and mutilated. The racial terrorism of El Paso is an all-out assault on the beauty God has created. God suffers as Latinxes suffer when murdered, devalued, and discarded as waste. God created culture and creativity. The erasure of this culture is a wounding, a marring of the image of God.
So in conclusion, it's a reality check. The Latinx body, culture, and person are a representation of the earth, goodness, and the Imago Dei. I have hope for imagination of something different. I hope you join me.